Hello, and welcome back to another Cello 101. Today we're going to be working on Allegretto by Suzuki out of the Suzuki Cello Book. So, in measure 4, we have something new that we haven't seen before. There are two diagonal slash lines in that top, that A line on the staff. That is called a caesura, and caesuras are basically pauses, like light pauses. In choral music, it would be akin to a breath mark, where you are not supposed to sustain the note, you're supposed to take a breath there. And honestly, when you're thinking about it, that is a very good way to kind of interpret what a caesura is for. Normally in larger work, classical, caesuras are dictated entirely by the conductor. Since this is a solo unaccompanied work, you are the conductor, so you can make them as long as you want. My recommendations is give them a little bit of space, give them a little bit of a pause, but don't overdo it. Like you're not running a fermata, which is something else that we have that actually shows up in measure 12 on beat 3. So there's a dot with a little bit of a dome over the top of it on that A note there. That is going to be a fermata, which means that you hold it as long as you want. And you can make them kind of ridiculously long if you're trying to prove a point of you're kind of being funny with it. But normally they're there for added contextual flavor. Again, in larger works, when you do have a conductor, conductors normally conduct the fermatas. Something fun to note here is fermatas are only going to be over notes, or normally only over notes. In that. So if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, fermata. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can kind of draw it out, and you can use it to build suspense. You can use it to build rhythmic interest. You can do a lot of fun and honestly quite funky things with them. The caesuras, however, are only going to be over or in between notes where there is space and no active tone being produced. The general rule of thumb is fermatas are for sounds, caesuras are for silences. At least that's normally how it goes. But you'll be able to find everybody breaking rules pretty much left, right, and center if you start looking. So especially once you start getting into the more advanced music and especially like ensemble work and that kind of thing. So let's go ahead and I will play through Allegretto by Suzuki for you first, and then you can kind of see how and where the caesuras and the fermata actually wind up coming in. So. Have a little bit of a fumble there, but as you can kind of see in measure 12, if you're following along with me, you could kind of see that I took a little bit of time with my A note in measure 12 with that fermata over it. But there was also a little bit of a break right after that note, so that there was a little bit of space so that that phrase could end and then the next one pick up and move on from there. So let's go ahead and we'll do the pickup through measure 3. This seems like a good place to start. So it's just going to be normal up, down, bowing. Nothing really fancy there, but do keep in mind between your staccato notes and your tenuto notes. So let's go ahead and start a little bit slow, and then we will go ahead and start with pickup and move through measure 3. So 1 and 2 and 3 and... I do apologize, we ran into measure 4. We'll just go ahead and run the phrases as they sit. In this case, you do notice something kind of interesting. The phrases run over the bar lines, so it isn't just, you know, a 4 phrase or a 4 bars is a phrase. It's actually offset a little bit because we do have that pickup. So let's go ahead and do measure, or the pickup, and then measures 1 through most of 4 one more time. So 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the pickup and then measure 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Let's go ahead and do that one more time, and then we can work on doing that transition including the caesura. So, starting at the last beat of measure 4 through the third beat of measure 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll do it a little bit faster, but we're going to put that break in between those 2 phrases in measure 4. So starting at the beginning, and then we're going to run to the third beat of measure 8. Pardon me. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so that was a little bit. You can do it a little bit longer. The problem is you're not wanting to interrupt the flow of the music. It's more of a breath instead of a stop, which initially, when you're getting into the finer details of musical notation, it can be kind of hard to differentiate exactly, and interpretation becomes definitely subjective, but also kind of hard to pull off without experience. So let's go ahead and we'll do the pickup in measure 8, so the last beat of measure 8, and then we will run 2, 3. We'll run to the third beat of measure 12, so that we can get the notes down, and then we'll do the last phrase, and then we'll come back and we'll add those 2 phrases together. So, starting at the 4th beat of measure 8, 1 and 2 and 3 and... So we can take our time with that last note in the phrase. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. Keep in mind those low scary notes are first finger on the C, that's a D. And then we also have open G, which is nice and low. So starting in 4th beat of measure 8, 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, and then let's move on to the 4th beat of measure 12, and then we'll just run to the end. So again, nice and slow, and we will start at the 4th beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Solid. So let's go ahead and go back to the 4th beat of measure 8, and then we're going to add all of that in together, and then we are going to play the fermata along with the caesura. So it'll be just as a heads up, so you can hear it before we go on. I'm just going to play measure 11 through measure 13 really quick. So one more time, just so you can kind of get the flow and the feel of that, so that when we play through it together, it isn't quite, it isn't a surprise. Starting at measure 11, go ahead and listen this time, and then we will play those last two phrases together with the caesura and the fermata. So. Now that you have it in your ear a little bit, let's go ahead and start with a pickup to measure 9. So the fourth beat of measure 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and... So now that we have that together, let's go ahead and start at the beginning and play all the way through. So go ahead and join me for this one, and then that will actually probably conclude with a little bit more talking, but that'll actually conclude all of our playing for today. So starting at the beginning, go ahead and join me. Allegretto by Suzuki. 1 and 2 and 3 and... We have learned two different scales, the G major and then the D major. Well, actually we didn't go that low, but the D major actually can start on the low C, so we have learned a number of note durations from whole notes to half notes, to quarter notes, to eighths, to 16th. We have learned rests, which all of those notes have a relative rest. So a 4-beat rest, a 2-beat rest, a 1-beat rest, half, quarter beat rest, all that fun stuff. We've learned a number of different ways to add color to songs. We have learned the staccato. We have learned tenuto. We have learned a couple of things to play with the length of notes, with the fermata. Then we can move on. We have also learned something to mess with the length and the flavor and the appeal of rests with the caesura. Unfortunately, I can't really demonstrate a gripping rest. But at this point, like we're starting to learn a fair bit of stuff. Like we're starting to get a number of things under our fingers, and we're actually starting to make some progress as musicians. So at this point, congratulations, you've done pretty well. And yeah, with that, I think we are concluded for the day. So thank you very much for joining me. I definitely appreciate the company, and yeah, y'all take care. Have a good week, and happy practicing.